and the walls start shaking and they're literally vibrating. And I'm like, why are the walls vibrating? And one of my teammates goes, oh, that's the crowd.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, I'm joined by Team USA wheelchair rugby star and Paralympic medalist Chuck Aoki. Chuck is one of the most recognized and decorated athletes in his sport. At the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games, Chuck led Team USA to its third consecutive silver medal. For Chuck, it was the fourth Paralympic medal of his career, making him the most decorated U.S. athlete in the sport. Chuck lives with hereditary autonomic neuropathy, a rare condition affecting his ability to feel pain and temperature. He has become a fierce advocate for athletes with disabilities and utilizes social media to educate the world about what it's like to live with a disability. In our conversation, we explore Chuck's remarkable journey and success secrets. You'll hear powerful ideas on building resilience, overcoming adversity, following your passions, and so much more. I'm going to be thinking about my conversation with Chuck for a long time to come, and I hope you take away as much from this one as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Chuck Aoki. Chuck, I'm so excited to dig into your story and everything that you're doing. Where I want to begin, I want to go way back. Let's start just with a baseline. Just give listeners a sense from your vantage point when you initially uncovered your condition and how it initially began to affect you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll go back to the beginning. So I grew up a very active kid. I'm originally from Minnesota, so shout out to Minnesota. And I grew up there, and so I was very active, really enjoyed sports a lot. And so like pretty much every kid, I started playing sports because why wouldn't you? That's what you do. But it became apparent pretty quickly to my parents and to everybody around me that something wasn't quite right. I'd get tired a lot easier. I'd kind of struggle. There's something not quite right. I was enjoying it, but it wasn't quite working for me. And so it wasn't until I was about 6 years old that I actually broke my leg and walked on it because I couldn't feel it, where we realized, okay, there's something seriously wrong here. Something pretty impaired is going on here. And so through a long process of going to doctor's offices and visits and kind of working through that process, we discovered that I had a very rare genetic condition where I don't feel anything in my legs or most of my legs and don't feel things in most of my arms. And so that was why I'd had these challenges, these struggles with sort of performing able-bodied sports, because while I could walk a little bit, it was really tiring for me. It was really hard to do because I had to step and walk so hard. And that led to these challenges. And so that was basically like when I was about 6 years old. I tried to walk back and forth from ages 6 to about ages 10 when they finally told me, you need to use a wheelchair full time. It's going to be best for your health, best for your legs, et cetera. And luckily, that's in some ways, that's the best thing that ever happened to me because it set me off on this journey to becoming a Paralympic athlete that I am today.
Chuck, that's a lot for anyone to process, let alone a 6 or a 7-year-old. And I know, all of us have differing degrees of memory of our, age 6, age 7, age 8 years. But yeah. What stands out the most in terms of like how you initially reacted to some of this and how you began to process some of the information that you were hearing from doctors and others?
I think what's interesting when I look back on it, in a lot of ways, I think from a very young age, I knew that there was something kind of different about me, like physically, there was something that wasn't quite right. So given the fact that I grew up going to doctors, like I said, I actually started even earlier than that, probably when I was four years old, going to the doctor was never like an unusual thing for me. That was just kind of part of the process. So I think that became very normalized, which is a good thing. It's good that it became this, like, just this is part of the process. This is what you do. And then, of course, growing up, I was like, yeah, I'd go to the doctor like once or twice a week. And my friends are like, you did what? Like, that's okay, but that's not what everybody does it. But I think for my own like young self mentally, I think it was a good that it got used to it. But I do remember also having a lot of frustration. I remember like, just for lack of a way to put it, wanting to be like all the other kids. I just wanted to play with my friends. I just wanted to be on the baseball team or the soccer team, and having just a lot of frustration and confusion about like, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm not doing anything wrong as far as I can tell. I can actually vividly recall one time after injuring myself and sitting in my room just crying, upset because I couldn't play sports. And, I said to my dad, like, why is this happening to me? He's like, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And so I remember a lot of that frustration. I remember that pretty vividly, but I also remember, and this is probably what's helped me be successful to this day, is I also remember my parents sort of coming to me and saying, we get you're frustrated. We get you're upset. You get to be frustrated. This is upsetting. You get to feel this way, but we also have to keep moving forward. We also have to figure out what we're going to do instead, because while it's totally valid to feel this way, especially as a kid, they basically taught me from that young age, you don't get to give up. You don't get to just say, well, I can't do the one thing I thought I was going to do, so screw it all. I'm done. I just give up. And they guys pretty much said to me in more gentle terms, you don't get to give up. We get to keep going. We get to keep going forward. And I think that when I really look back, I think those two things really sit with me still. The allowance to feel your feelings and understand those, but then also to sort of look forward and say, okay, that's how I feel today. How are we going to make sure we don't feel this way tomorrow?
That is such a profound and powerful story, Chuck. And I think it is something that in the fast paces of life, we often forget that we can and should experience conflicting emotions and conflicting ideas at the same time. This idea that it's okay. Your parents told you it's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to feel bad in a sense, but at the same time, that it's not enough just to accept that you're frustrated, and there's an opportunity to still make the most of opportunities that you do have.
Right.
And I think that's really, really neat that they instilled that idea in you at such an early age.
Yeah. And I think I'm super lucky that they did, because I also know that it's not easy to be the parent of a kid with a disability. They didn't sign up for that. That wasn't their plan. And so their ability to, like you said, take these valid frustrations I was having and say, you get to feel that way. And you didn't have any control over feeling that way today, but you do have control over what you do tomorrow. You have control over how we approach to the next day. And I think I'm, like you said, I'm super lucky that I got that from a young age, because I think that mindset is one that stuck with me throughout adversities and challenges throughout life that I've faced. It's like, that's frustrating, but what are you going to do about it? Right. To a certain extent, like, are you going to sit here and just sort of let it happen to you? Or are you going to try and take action against it?
Yeah. I think often about the idea that the two of the only things that we can control in life are our attitude and our effort. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of other things that we are really in control of.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think especially when you want to perform at a high level of something, those are literally the two things you can control. And in some ways, people think the higher up you get on different achievement levels and stuff, it's like, oh, you must have all this control power. It's like, maybe, but in reality, what I really have control over is, like you said, my attitude and the energy with which I bring to the things I do. And I try to bring the maximum to all those things, and it's one of those situations where it's not always going to work out in your favor. But if you bring that energy, and if you do bring, like you said, that the right mindset to think, you're going to achieve a lot, and you're going to find that it becomes infectious to the people around you too, which I think is what's so powerful, is that, we always talk about why do people gravitate towards certain people? It's because they have energy. They're passionate. They care. I think we're in a world sometimes where it can be cool not to care as much, but I'm the opposite. I'm like, I think we should care. I think caring about things is great. It's awesome. And it's how you achieve success. You're going to be successful with something that you don't care about, because why would you be?
Very, very, very well said, Chuck. I'm curious. So now a pep talk from a parent or somebody that's mentoring you or coaching you is one thing, but then putting into action and sustaining that action is a totally different thing. So I'm curious, you get that pep talk. It's okay to feel frustrated, but you've got to move forward, and you've got to find a way to move forward. Was it kind of an overnight shift of momentum and attitude for you? Was it something that kind of took a bit of time? Talk about kind of those next days and weeks after that, for lack of a better term, that little pep talk that you got.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been a what's next kind of person. I've always been an optimist person. That's kind of been my natural state of being. So I think that's helped. But I think what really did get me going is that I found the next thing to go to. Baseball was my favorite sport growing up, right? That's what I loved to do. I loved everything. Even if when I was hurt and I couldn't play, I kept score, right? Because I always helped the coach and I'd keep the batting order line. Like I always loved having those things. And so I think what's super helpful is that my parents, though, were said, okay, you can't play this sport anymore. We're going to find another sport for you to play, right? And so the first sport I played was wheelchair basketball, actually, which I loved it and fell in love with. And so I think the process of accepting this new state happened fairly quickly for me. I think, and that's not the case for everyone. But again, I think it's because I had something that I could do that I could direct my energy towards. I had sports. I had these other things. I was a pretty good student, so I worked hard in school. But I think what helped was having that next thing that I was able to direct my energy towards. And it turned having a disability, using a wheelchair, from something that could be negative and can be frustrating into something that was positive. Oh, it actually lets me play this really fun sport. And now I'm meeting people who also use wheelchairs, and I'm meeting friends and doing these things. And I'm traveling across the country to play basketball. Like, holy cow, this is really cool. It certainly didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like you woke up the next day and like, okay, great, all's well and good. But it happened fairly quickly because I think we found things that allowed me to feel empowered with my new sort of state of being, so to speak. And I think that's really, really impactful and really helpful, is that I had that thing that, there were so many things I couldn't control in my life, but I could control, as we said, I could control my effort towards basketball, and I could control my attitude towards showing up to each practice and working really hard, listening to what the coach said, doing what I wanted to do, extra practice, all that kind of stuff.
Were you, did people tell you or reflecting back on it, like, were you at that point, not just a contributor to the team, but somebody that others on the team look to kind of follow as an example?
It's funny you say that. By the very first practice, and I don't remember this, but my parents remember this vividly, the very first basketball practice they ever took me to, my parents, I was out there with a bunch, and I was probably 10, 11, so pretty young. So I was out there with a bunch of kids, and my parents were on the sidelines with with all the other parents. And this one parent, their parents have been around, we're just kind of chatting, and they go, God, that kid's going to be a general someday. And my mom was like, I wonder what they're talking about. And it was me, it turns out, because apparently I was out there just like, hey, you've got to go over there. You've got to do this. We got to do this, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, I'd been to like one practice ever, maybe. I didn't know anything about basketball, but I had taken this very like sort of commanding attitude. I'll be honest, I wasn't the best athlete at basketball. I wasn't a very good shooter, which is a big, important skill. But I was always a really hard worker. And I know that, reflecting on it, looking back, I think my teammates always respected that, respected how hard I was willing to work, even if it was something that I wasn't the best player at it, but I worked really hard at it. I really cared about it. I think that kind of shone through, and it certainly helped me be a better player than I maybe quote unquote should have been because of the effort level I put in. So I think in basketball, I earned a reputation as a really hard worker. And, by the time I picked up rugby later, but as I played basketball throughout high school, I became a captain. I became an all tournament type of player because I just worked that hard, and so I think that I was able to have people look up to me, but it took a little while, basketball wasn't one I just woke up and was naturally good at. I had to work at it.
And what did that look like for you? I mean, everybody has a different level of work ethic. You obviously have an extraordinary level of work ethic, but what did that improvement process look like? Are you someone who sets kind of big vision and then works towards it, kind of small interim step goals? Like, what does that look like for you when you're trying to get good at something?
So as a kid, it really was just throwing myself into it and just, I'm going to go to every practice I can go to. If I have time, I'm going to go to the park down the road and shoot more. I'm going to push. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to just kind of lean all into it and dive into it. And I think for me, that's really where I've always found the ability to become successful or to improve at something, is to find something that you really love and care about. And that's not to say that we can't improve in things that we don't love and care about, but I believe that to really achieve our maximum potential in something, we have to find at least some aspect of it we love and care about. And that can be very different for people. But for me, it's just like, I love the competition. I love being on a team. I love having a group of people that we're setting out to try to achieve something together. In basketball and rugby, of course, it's winning the match or winning the game. But for me, I think it's just a diving in, as an adult, I do set goals. I usually set pretty big goals and then try to figure out pieces that are steps that are going to get me there. But at its core for me, it's all about just finding something that I love to do, that I love a passion for, that I wake up and I think about it first thing in the morning. And it's something that I would do whether I got paid $1 million or I had to pay $1 million to do it. It's something that I love it that much. And so for me, in some ways, it obviously takes a lot of hard work to get good at something, but it's easy because it's something I love to do. I love being part of this world. I love getting to compete and have these teammates and to train. And I love the process of it. And I think that's what helps carry in. So that's to kind of put a bow on it. It's really about falling in love with the process of something and falling in love with the thing itself. And when you do that, again, it's not like it's easy to work and train, but it becomes easier because it's just something you just love to do.
So on that subject of falling in love with something, just to fast forward a little bit, I understand that your first exposure to rugby came at about the age of 15, 16 after seeing the movie Murder Ball.
Yeah.
How soon after the movie did you begin to play rugby, and how quickly did you come to love rugby?
So I would say it took probably 6 or 8 months, because when I first saw it, I was actually recovering from an injury, of course. And it took a little time to convince my parents that it was a good fit, just because, again, I was a kid who got injured a lot. And hey, let's go play the sport called Murder Ball where they crash into each other. So it took a little bit of time, but I will say with rugby, it was the definition of love at first sight. When I tell this story a lot, whenever anyone shows up to play wheelchair rugby for the first time, we can know within about the first 5 minutes if it's a sport that's for them or not for them. And that's true for about 95% of people. Because what happens is, the first time you get into the chairs are not like your everyday wheelchair. They're little tanks. They're built up with like guards and barricades, and they're built for combat. Basically, they weigh like almost 50 pounds. They're intense machines. And the first time that someone runs into you, pretty much full speed, people have one of two reactions. Either they are like, oh, yeah, that was awesome. Like their eyes light up, they're excited, or they're kind of like, oh, I didn't like that, which there's no disrespect if you don't like it. It's not for everybody. But I was an eyes light up type of person, and I'll run right back into you type of person. I was like, I loved it. I fell in love with the physicality of it, the contact of it. My very first practice, I always tell people, I got beat up. I got sent flying into walls. I got absolutely annihilated, and I loved every second of it. I had just, when you grow up with a disability, you can often sort of be seen as fragile, or just sort of, oh, let's be careful. I don't want you to get hurt, whether it's mental or physical. For the first time I had the support, was like, no, get out there and like, you're in it. Like you're in it with these guys. And if you got to be tough enough to make it. And I loved that challenge. I love that physicality of it. I love just the way the sport plays. It's a very physical sport. It's a very high contact, but there's actually a ton of strategy that goes into it as well. And I think that's really cool. And so I love being able to exercise in the middle of having to play this physical, intense sport. Your brain also has to be constantly thinking, like, what am I doing? What's the next move? Where are we going next? What's happening next play? You're constantly playing a chess game in your head. And like I said, I fell in love with the sport pretty much for the first time I got hit, I guess would be the way to put it.
Fell in love with the sport that first time you got hit.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to a point where you felt like you were pretty good at it, though?
So interestingly enough, I tell people that story about how I got beat up at practice. What I don't always tell is that I knew from that first practice I was pretty good. Yes, I was getting beat up a lot. Yes, I was. But I was also pretty fast. I was pretty agile. I was dipping and darting and diving around people. Because what I tell people is that the skills of wheelchair basketball, which are being able to be fast, be maneuverable, be chair skills, those skills translated perfect to wheelchair rugby. And the one thing that I was really bad at basketball, which was literally shooting the ball, that went away. I didn't have to do that anymore. I just had to put the ball in my lap and take it across the line. And so from that first practice, I knew I had a pretty good shot to be pretty good at the sport. I remember the very first tournament we ever went to, I think we were ranked. We came into it ranked like 7th or 8th, pretty low. And we ended up winning the whole tournament. And no one was like, who is this team? Like, who are these guys? I remember people were coming up to us like, where are you guys from? Like Minnesota? Like, where did you come from? And then we went to our first national championships ever. And in the US, there's Division I, Division II, and Division III. But prior to my arrival, and another teammate of mine who eventually made the national team as well, I think the team was somewhere in low D3. They weren't weren't very good. Our first year, we played for the Division II national championship, and it was just another people like, who are these guys? Where did they come from? And so I knew from that moment that I had a pretty good future at the sport. I didn't have a good sense of how far it could possibly take me, but I'd heard of the Paralympics. I knew it was something I had dreamed of doing. But yeah, honestly, going back on it, that first practice, I was like, I think I've got a shot at this.
So then when did the idea of the Paralympics actually start to come into focus as something that it was at least on your radar, something that you were perhaps striving towards? Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. So I think, I'd heard of the Paralympics growing up. It was this like kind of thing like, oh, it's like the Olympics, but for disabled people, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I'd like to do that. And I tell the first time though that it really sunk in for me is I was probably 12 or 13. And I was at a wheelchair basketball camp actually. And a Paralympic athlete was there, a guy named Paul Schulte. And he moved like no one had ever seen before. It looked like he was gliding across the floor. Who is this? How is this guy so fast? This is unbelievable. And it just looked effortless. The way he turned, the way he shot the ball, really just an incredible thing. And that was the first time I realized there's levels to this, right? There's playing as a kid, there's playing the next level, but then there's like this other level that's like unbelievable. And so I knew that level was out there. And I think I knew in basketball, I didn't have a really good chance to ever making it to that level. But once I started playing rugby and realized, hey, I'm pretty good at this, I started to think, I think I could make the Paralympics. I think I want to try to do that. And so after that first national championships that I mentioned, where we made it to the championship game and no one expected us to be there, I got invited to try out for the national team, actually for the year after Beijing. So the Olympics and Paralympics were in Beijing in 2008. I was invited to try out for the next year's team, which is pretty much a brand new team. The Paralympic guys took the year off, or most of them did, which totally makes sense. And so I showed up to basically be on the team and just kind of go for it. And I made that first team. And from that moment, it was like, okay, like I made it this far. There's no reason I should stop short of trying to make the Paralympics. And so I would move to Arizona for the only collegiate wheelchair rugby team in the country, where I started training down there full time with other hopefuls, other guys who want to make the Paralympics. And yeah, so I would say right around high school is when I said, this is something that I think I can do. I want to do. And I'm going to go all in for it. I'm going to put my head down and go for it, because I realized that going back to that first guy I ever saw, I was like, I could do that in this sport. I could be that guy who just, it moves around, moves effortlessly, just aggressive, attacking, physical. And I did it. And I'm so glad that I took the leap to just kind of go for it, because it's led me on this just amazing journey.
An amazing journey for sure. And a story that you're still very much writing.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. I'm curious, when you think back to that moment that you kind of achieved that initial goal of making your first Paralympic team, what do you remember most about that moment?
Oh, wow. So yeah, the first moment I made the Paralympic team, we have a selection camp, of course, just kind of try out things like that. And I'd been on the team for the 3 years prior to London 2012, which was my first Paralympics. So I knew, and I was a major player. I was starting a lot of games. So I knew I was had a pretty good chance.
You knew you were in the mix at least.
Absolutely. But, you don't know until you know. And so I'll never forget the way they selected us is they bring all the people who've been trying out into a room. Then they announce the team. You shake hands with the coaches. And then the way it worked at the time is you kind of then left the room and to kind of go to a separate room where the coach would talk to the team and stuff. So anyway, so I remember hearing my name and at first just being like, wow, this is amazing. And shaking the coach's hand, hugging our team leader, stuff like that, and going to the other room with the guys who'd already been named. And the second I got into that room, I was just beside myself, so excited, jabber. And my teammates were like, hey, you should call your mom and tell her, because like this is a big moment. I was like, oh yeah, sure. So I get out my phone to call my mom. And as the phone is ringing, I just burst into tears, like full on sobbing. It actually makes me a little misty just remembering it. because the emotion was just so intense in that moment. And it's funny now, of course, my mom answers the phone and she knows it's a selection day and she hears me sobbing. And so the first words out of her mouth are, "Did you get cut?" I was like, "No, Mom, I made it." And I tell that story and it sits with me to this day because it's one of the few times in my life that I just cried pure tears of joy. Like it was truly joy because I was so excited, so happy. I'd gone through a lot of struggles in my life with health, a lot of challenges, a lot of times at doctor's offices, a lot of times at hospitals, a lot of times doing things with my health that I didn't want to have to be doing. And I missed out on things. But in that moment, it had been worth it. I had made it. I had made it through all those struggles. I made it through all those tough times. And my mom had been there with me for almost all of them. So that's why I think it was so emotional calling her. But it was just such an incredible moment of just this, I did it. Like I made it, And I'll never forget that feeling because it was just such a powerful explosion of emotion, for lack of a better way to put it. And it was just like, yeah, like all those struggles were worth it because I achieved this incredible dream. I'd worked very hard to do it. I'd given up a lot to try to make it. And it just sticks with me. It's one of those flashful moments in your life that I can, as if I think about it, it's like I'm there again, even though it's been almost 13 years now.
Yeah, I can see, Chuck, and feel the emotion in you as you tell that story. And I mean, just such an accomplishment and such a testament to your hard work and commitment to your craft and positive mindset. I mean, I just can't even imagine what that moment must have felt like. And then you've got to kind of move on from that moment and continue on to the task at hand, which is now go to the games. What do you remember? I love asking Olympians about their first games. What do you remember about the first games? Was it what you envisioned? That's always a big topic of discussion I love to get into too. Was it what you envisioned?
In my case, and I think I'm very lucky because the London 2012 Paralympics is still considered possibly the greatest ever in terms of just the event, the way they hosted it and everything like that. And so it really was everything I could have imagined. From the second we landed in London and got off the plane, and one of the first things we saw was just this massive billboard about the Paralympics. It said something like, "Thanks for the warm-up," very, very cheeky reference to the Olympics being like the warm-up act for the Paralympic Games, which is really cool. So from that moment, it was amazing. It was the first time in my life that I really felt like a professional athlete in a way that I knew that all Paralympians deserve to be treated like, because I knew I worked hard. I knew we trained hard, but really we only went outside of the village a couple times because obviously you're there to compete and to train. But every time we went out, we would get swarmed by people who were so excited to see Paralympians. And the Olympics had just ended. Like, "Oh, the Paralympics are coming. We're so excited. We're going to be there. We can't wait to watch it." And of course, rugby is very popular in England, so they're very excited to meet us. And of course, there was some lighthearted jabbing, perhaps, because they were all Brits, of course, and fans of them. And so it really was spectacular. And then just being in the village and being around all these other people from all over the world, and all these other amazing American athletes, it was special. It was so special to be a part of. And then just the energy and the atmosphere and the dining hall and the dorms and all that stuff, it really was just this incredible thing. But what I really also remember, and another one that I'll never forget, is before our first game, we were getting ready in the locker room and stuff. I was excited. And the way it works, at least in rugby, is before the match, they pretty much line you up right next to the other team before to go out on the court. And so you're literally like 2 feet from these people you're about to go play this very physical, intense game about. And so we're in this room and our guys are chanting USA and we're playing Great Britain. I should add, we're playing Great Britain. And they're, "Come on, GB," and it's back and forth, jibber jabber. And all of a sudden, we're in the room, and this is kind of a temporary hallway because, a lot of the facilities at the Olympics, Paralympics are not built forever, right? They're built. So the walls they're strong, but they're a little flimsy, and the walls start shaking and they're literally vibrating. And I'm like, why are the walls vibrating? And one of my teammates goes, "Oh, that's the crowd." And all of a sudden you could hear just this roar and the walls are shaking. And then the staff or whatever at the front's like, "All right, time to go." The doors open. And we roll out, and I'll never forget the noise. I'll just never forget how loud it was in there. It was so loud. I always thought the example, "It's so loud you can't think," was an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. That level of sound is real. We hit the court, and it was just deafening. I couldn't hear from me to 2 feet away. I couldn't even think. I couldn't even start to warm up. I was just so overwhelmed by the noise. And thankfully, one of my teammates literally runs into me and is like, hey, like, come on, we got a game to play. Oh, that's right. Snap back to it. But I'll just never forget that sound. I'll never forget that noise of just, this is what it's like to be a professional athlete playing at this level. It's this intensity, this energy, this passion. The crowd was very pro-British, of course, so they're cheering against us, which is totally fine. But it was incredible to feel that noise, to feel that energy. Like you said, there are a few things in life that live up to what you expect it to be, but that really did in that moment. It really was just this unbelievable moment.
Chuck, again, another moment. I can see the energy and the emotion that you have for that moment as you tell that story. Just such a powerful story. And I'm curious, now that you have a lot more experience competing at the highest level, do you find like that you're able to like respond in those moments? And because that energy can be good and constructive, but that energy also from like a performance perspective can be challenging. So have you found ways to kind of get in the moment, focus in and be your best, even in the most rowdy and ruckus of circumstances, now that you have more experience under your belt?
Yeah, I think it is the kind of thing that over time you do get more experience and kind of understand how to handle better. And I think it's something that we've worked really hard with, like our mental performance coach on the team, to like understand, okay, it's like one thing we really try to do on our team, and I try to do as an athlete, I always try to embrace the moment. Like, it's really cool that I'm playing in front of 15,000 people. And like, that's a really cool thing. Like, let's not forget that that's really awesome, but let's also move to the task at hand, right? So it's sort of like the way I approach it now is taking that moment, sort of embrace the energy, embrace the excitement, like enjoy that. And then, okay, now take the next step to the next task, which is the game itself, of course, right? And so I think over time I've gotten a lot better at it, and I think I've always tried to use that energy to excite me. Something I tell people is, and this is to this day, I still get nervous before every game. I get the butterflies in my stomach. My heart starts to race. And it used to be when I was younger, that really freaked me out, honestly. The stomach butterflies, I'm like, God, what's wrong with me? Like, am I hungry? Like, my throat, like, I would get into this panic mode. Because I'm like, I don't understand what's going on with my body. But now I've come to understand that it's just nerves. You're just excited. It means you care about it. You don't get nervous about something that you don't care about, at least in some way. And so I've learned to take that. When I feel that bubbling up, I get a big smile on my face now, because I'm like, oh, there it is. Like, this is it. This is for real. And it's the kind of thing that if I ever stop having that feeling, I'll probably stop competing, because it means I've lost the fire for it. I've lost the desire, the burn to do it at this level. And so, I think likewise with the energy in a room, you try to just channel that and use that energy to excite you, to get you fired up. But it's also an important balance to make sure you don't let it overwhelm you. And I think that's, again, something we work with our mental side a lot, which is why it's like, okay, enjoy this, embrace it. And then, okay, what's the first task we're going to do in the game? And then what's the next task? And by focusing on those tasks, I think that's helped me kind of channel that energy. Because there used to be times where, you'd come out hair on fire, 1,000,000 miles an hour. And after the first quarter, the coach is like, what on earth is going on out there? You're like, I don't know. Sorry. And so working on that, and I think that is something, to your point, that only gets better with experience. It's impossible to simulate a crowd of 12,000 people. You kind of have to just live it. But at this point, I've played in front of enough big crowds that I know how to handle it. I know how to embrace the energy. And it's something I really just try to convey to my teammates as well. This is going to be cool. This is going to be exciting. It might feel overwhelming, but at the end of the day, same game, same ball, same court, same teammates, same strategy. You just have to kind of refocus on those fundamentals that you've known. And it's why you train so hard. It's why you practice so hard. In a lot of ways, the crowd is very cool, but it's also very secondary to what you're actually there to do.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, you outlined there so many frameworks and ideas that everyone, all of us, can put into action in higher pressure or higher intensity moments in all of our lives, no matter what it is that we're doing. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely, really, really helpful, Chuck. And again, I think that just that idea about, like you said, about caring, right? Like a lot of that, I am a huge believer that a lot of pressure, for lack of a better term, comes from caring. And the idea that you're able to reframe it that way and help it serve you and further motivate you, is a really, really powerful skill, again, that we all can learn from and find ways to apply to our own lives. And I think even further, like you said, the idea of when you don't feel that pressure, when you don't feel those nerves and that energy, that might be a signal to you that you don't have that passion that, again, to bring this all full circle, that passion that you talked about early on in our conversation, that is in many ways a key ingredient to helping you excel at almost anything that you want to put your mind to. That passion and has propelled you. I'm curious, Chuck, as we start to wrap up our conversation today, as you mentioned, I mean, you're doing, well, as you mentioned, a Minnesota kid, went to University of Minnesota, got a graduate degree in public policy. You're doing so much today, in addition to competing, to try and build awareness and advocate for individuals with disabilities. You do a great job. Everybody should check out Chuck on Instagram. I mean, the way you do it with, I would call it a mix of, I don't know, a mix of humor, a mix of sarcasm, but just like a very direct way of educating the public about challenges that people with disabilities have and how you navigate life and how you break through barriers. It's so refreshing in a way. And I think it's just going to continue to be such an important tool in educating and building awareness. So I highly encourage everybody to go check Chuck out on Instagram in particular. But I know, Chuck, like I said, Minnesota kid, you talked about your love for sports at an early age. You grew up idolizing people like Kirby Puckett, and then later folks like Joe Mauer.
Of course.
Have you taken a moment to pause and reflect and say, like, there are people in a situation like you or in a circumstance similar to you that are looking at you and saying, and you're there, Joe Mauer, you're there, Kirby Puckett. Like, because there are countless, whether it's kids or adults out there that look at what you're doing and say, I can learn from Chuck. I can grow by modeling my behaviors after Chuck. Like, is that something that you've taken a moment to pause and think about? Like, for somebody out there, you're there, Joe Mauer, you're there, Kirby Puckett. Like, those guys were.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I certainly think about, in terms of like, how could I be the best role model for the next generation of athletes, or even just people really to come? Because I think that as we as athletes grow, it's important for us to think about the legacy we're leaving behind. It's important for us to think about, not just me today, how can I make things best for me, but how can I make things best for people who are coming behind me so that maybe they don't have to face quite the same struggles I faced. Or maybe there's some way they can circumvent this or avoid that challenge and actually be able to just live a little bit of an easier life and a successful life. And so it's humbling for the idea that I'd be in the category with some of these athletes that I look up to. But it's one of the reasons why I try to be so public facing with my disability and talking about it, because the reality is when I grew up, I loved looking up to those guys. I think they're great athletes, but I didn't know anyone with a disability I could look up to. I couldn't have told you a Paralympian who I could have named, and that person they don't have to look up to me. There's so many amazing Paralympic athletes out there, but if telling my story, of being very public and open about disability and things like that changes even a few lives, even gets a few people involved in sports who had never heard of it before, or helps them open their eyes to something they can do, it gets them involved. Like, that means I've done my job. I've left a legacy behind. Obviously winning the medals I've won are incredible, and hopefully I've got at least one more left in me. And those are incredible achievements. But really, I'll know I've really achieved a lot if I'm able to your point, have athletes who come up. I've had young athletes come up to me and say they've looked up to me, and it means the world to me, because it means that not only did I compete and train, work hard, but I did it the right way. I did it in a way that I'll help people around me grow. I've tried to lift up others around me and always make sure, I'm going at this as a team, not alone. To bring it back to my parents, another thing they taught me always is it takes a village, right? It takes a lot of people to raise a person. It's not just, no one does this alone. That doesn't mean that you didn't work hard. That doesn't mean you didn't do your best, but it took people supporting you in your world to do it. And, I want to help raise others up in my world to say, you can do this too. You can do this too. I did it and I believe in you. And so, yeah, I think a lot, especially as I know I'm closer to the end of my career than the beginning of it. I think I can say that honestly. I do think a lot about the legacy I'm leaving behind, and how can I make sure that what it is that I do leaves a really good footprint, path to follow. Everyone's going to walk their own journey, of course, but is there something I can leave behind so people can understand this is how you can do it? And again, there's someone you can point to who looks like you. There's a lot of power in visibility. There's a lot of power in seeing someone like you out there doing it. It doesn't have to be in sport too. It could be in business. It could be in art. It could be in all kinds of spaces. But to see someone very public who looks like you, I think is something very powerful. And it's something I strive to be for people if I can.
You mentioned maybe one more medal in you. Hopefully one more medal. I shouldn't say maybe. Hopefully one more medal in you.
Yeah.
With the Olympics being in Los Angeles, is that something that gives you a little extra excitement and maybe opportunity to build awareness for the Paralympics and everything that you're trying to accomplish outside of sport?
It absolutely does. The honest truth is that the games were not coming to the U.S. in 28. I would have thought very hard about retiring after Paris, not because I'm burned out or anything, but just because, I've done a lot. I've done this for a long time and, I come to natural age. But the fact that it's a home games, it's truly a once in a lifetime type of opportunity for me. I don't know how I could pass it up. I don't know how I couldn't pass up the chance to go for it, because you're completely right. It is truly a chance to build a legacy. And while obviously I'm going to train very hard and do everything I can to bring home a gold medal in 2028 for Team USA, in a lot of ways, the real work and the real legacy is going to be beyond it. This is the first time we've had a games in the US, a summer game, since 1996. I was 5 years old. And the first time we had a home games at all since 2002, of course. And so it really is a chance to reinvigorate all of these amazing Olympic and Paralympic sports in our country. It really is a chance to open so many people's eyes to, oh my gosh, I could do that. Wow, I could do that. Wow. I think we have a chance as athletes to leave a really incredible legacy behind. Well, of course, our first duty is to compete and to do our best to represent. I actually also think we all have a duty to raise up our sports and our communities within this country to say, hey, it's me this time, but it could be you next time. It could be you next time. It could be you next time. I think what makes the Olympics and Paralympics so unique is that, of course, it's only every 4 years. So it's a slow burn for us to get there. But when we're there, we capture the country's attention in such a unique way. And I really do believe that we have a duty to do our best to create a legacy and to build foundations so that when the LA Games happen, everyone in this country is so excited and so amazed. And then the parent of the kid's disability is like, oh my gosh, my kid could do that. I got to go find something for him. Or the adult who suffered a spinal cord injury 4 years ago is like, oh my gosh, I want to get back out there and be active. Or wherever they come from, we want to be ready for them, because we know that LA is going to shine a spotlight on this in a way like nothing else. And I'm so excited for it to get there. And like I said, I feel good. My body feels good. I'm mentally in a good place. So I think I'll be there, but there's a lot of work to be done, because you still have to earn it every single time out.
You do still have to earn it every single time out. And just so beautifully said, Chuck, this idea of not only building your own success, but paving a legacy that makes others feel empowered and inspired, and as a result, lift others up. I mean, that is one of the central pieces of the everybody pulls the tarp mindset that we talk about every week on this podcast, is that we are all in this together. It takes a village. So many of the themes that we talked about, Chuck, there is no question in my mind, you are a certified tarp puller. You are an inspiration, not just to athletes, but people in general, I think, can learn so much from your story and your wisdom and the ideas you've shared. I just feel so grateful that we were connected by a mutual friend and that we had the opportunity to have this conversation today. Chuck, thank you for being a tarp puller. And I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me this week.
Awesome. I'm honored to be a tarp puller, Andrew. That means a lot to me. It's a wonderful sort of mindset that I think you built this platform around. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure. I'm glad we were connected as well. And yeah, hopefully people will hear this and check it out. And obviously LA is a few years away, but it's never too early to start thinking about it and planning for it. So
I know everybody listening is excited about those games coming up in just a couple of years. Chuck, thank you so much again, and we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.